acts, he writes, he produces, he directs, and he teaches. Multi-talented Joseph Reitman has been perfecting his craft from movies to the small screen. We discuss how the pandemic is affecting his creative process and the road we both have traveled. We get real and honest about how addiction almost cost us everything. Our powerful conversation next on the PowerPLAY Show.
From the studios at Hull Bay Productions, this is the PowerPLAY.
Welcome to the PowerPLAY. I'm Tonya McGrath, actor, producer, director, writer, and may I add, high school classmate. To say my guest is multi-talented is quite the understatement. Joseph Reitman has appeared in major motion pictures, including The Perfect Storm, Money Monster, and Lady in the Water, to name a few of my favorites. He is also known for his roles on television series Happy, 37 Problems, and Ray Donovan, another one of my favorites. But I remember Joe breakdancing with some of our other classmates on the streets near Brookline High School. What I didn't know was the one major battle we both have fought and can talk about today. But for now, I'd like to introduce my guest, Joseph Reitman. Joe, welcome to the PowerPLAY.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. This is quite a treat, and I'm just really glad that we can get this time to talk about. But, you know, before we get into, you know, really what I wanted to have you on to talk about, just how are you doing? How are you kind of managing the pandemic, if you will?
Well, I'm not dead yet, and I think that's a really good win for 2020. That's what I keep saying. It's been a very stifling year, obviously not just for me. It's been a difficult year adjusting. Obviously, I've been operating from home. I'm much closer to 60 than I am to 20, as you know. So I am trying to make sure that I take care of myself and get my 8 hours of sleep a night and take my vitamins and eat healthy and work out and do everything I can to survive this plague. So, but other than that, I mean, it's been frustrating creatively. Obviously, the industry has been shut down for most of the time. I've been lucky to work a little bit, and I've actually spent a lot of time teaching, which has been making me happy, actually very happy. So that's been good. How about you?
That's one of the passions that you have is teaching. I've been good. Again, I'm working at home. My husband kind of built me this wonderful office/studio down here, so I'm not having to deal with people in this pandemic. But I miss talking to people face to face. I miss, you go outside, and I'm one of those people, when you walk by, I like to say hello to you, but you can't tell what they're doing because the mask is on, and I'll try and smile at someone, but you have no idea what I'm doing.
And I'm very much an extrovert myself, and I feed off of other people's energy, and that seems to have been shut off from me. I go to the farmer's market every week just to get that interaction once a week with the people who I deal with on a regular basis. That's part of what I've done to kind of like have some normality. But it has been very difficult because I really do, like, even just walking down the street and walking into a shoe store or anything, just having that interaction with somebody, and that feeds my soul, and that has been cut off, which is sad.
So you talked a little bit about, the creative process and that kind of being a little of a damper right now, to say the least. How have you handled the working, not working in COVID? And you must talk to other creative types as yourself, as do I. How's it been? Like, how do you cope with that?
The most interesting thing has happened is that I get very frustrated when I'm not working as an artist. And when this happened and everybody wasn't working, I actually found a piece that I was surprised by, because I'm like, oh, well, none of us can be working. So there's a kind of a weird even playing field that presented itself to me that was like, that's fascinating. And I found a little bit of comfort in that. But on top of that, I've tried to do a few things. One, keep a schedule of some sort. I increased my teaching, like we discussed. I added classes because I felt like if I can't work, I want to help others. That made me accountable in a lot of ways. And being accountable is a very important thing in my life that I need. If I have to show up, I do. And I find if you let me vanish, I will. So making sure that I have those things. I also took a class on something called Coursera, which is a course class. I took a class at Yale called The Science of Well-Being, and I focused on learning just a lot of it I knew, but reminding myself to meditate every day, reminding myself to be grateful for things, make lists of things that I want to do with my life in the future, making sure that I address whatever negativity is going on in my life so it doesn't eat me alive. It does a lot of things like that, what to be grateful for, what not to, and studying a little bit, reading more. I love watching movies, but I'm done. I think I've watched everything on Netflix and Hulu. I think I'm done. But I think for me, a lot of that is a big part of it. Exercising as much as I could. I hurt myself and had to take a break because I'm excessive as a human being. So and I'm not as young as I used to be. Yeah. So that was a damaging thing, but everything from a documentary that I've been working on, trying to write some. There are things that I can control. I just can't let myself be somebody who is waiting for results. I want to play chess. I don't want to be a chess piece. So if I can control some of those things, that's what I've tried to take control of during this time.
I like what you said about, being, holding yourself accountable and not allowing yourself to kind of let things down or let people down or not be present, when people or things are asking you to do. And I think that that's so important right now because this pandemic has done one thing, and that's really allowed us to isolate in a way. And for us as extroverts, we're kind of going a little stir crazy, but I'm concerned with those introverts who are very comfortable with this type of isolation. My son he's a very creative person. He writes, he does music, but he is so comfortable with just being in his room 24/7 and not having to do anything. And that is the part that kind of worries me.
I mean, it's partially generational. That whole young generation is used to looking at their phone and not being in person. They were much more comfortable with these Zoom kind of conversations than we were before this all happened. They've been FaceTiming since they had a phone. And even though we had FaceTime accessible to us, we didn't always FaceTime. Kids are always FaceTime. They're always looking at each other, which has changed a lot of things, oddly enough, in the entertainment industry. Kids really know what they look like on film now. When I started acting, I didn't know what I looked like on film, and kids do internally. They just know what's natural, what isn't. I mean, you take a look at TikTok, everyone's a performer because everyone understands how to act natural on film. And that there just wasn't, how many pictures do I have of myself from high school? Like 12? I don't even know. So it's such an interesting thing that shift of these children who are introverts, yet so comfortable being extroverts in the medium, but not extroverts in the world is the shift that I think the world's had in the last couple of years for sure.
I wanted to have you on and for this purpose, and I want to start with reading a post that you put on social media late last year, and it read, 27 years ago, I was a mess, lost and confused, not sure what I was doing with my life or how to get it in order. I do now. Now I have perspective. Especially this year, I've been able to look at what I really want in the years ahead. I know how to be grateful for the things I have and the people around me. I am comfortable in my own skin, able to take care of my dogs and have a well-stocked fridge and a place to call home. More than anything, thanks to all of you who believe in me, who support me, who make me laugh, who give me a reason to show up every day. If anyone here ever is struggling with this disease, please know that I am always here for you to talk to. Love and light to all. Well, I just stopped in my tracks because that was me. That is me. I am in light now. I am in this much better place. But, you have 27 years. I have a little bit over 3 years. And
congratulations.
I thank you. And congratulations to you too. But everything you said was just so on point. It was so honest and so real. And I think it was the first time that I read it that way and I was seeing myself in the mirror. And I told you we want to have a conversation about this and just kind of talk about our struggles. And I don't know where you want to start, but let's start with 27 years ago.
Okay. Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
I can start. I drank for 30 years. I drank every day for 30 years. And I started when I was roughly 18, 19 years old. I think I stopped for, having my children. I had a couple of medical procedures, and, you can't bring alcohol into the hospital. And I'm not making light of this all, but as soon as I was able to, I started drinking again. And I know what, was my kind of rock bottom when I knew I had to stop. What was yours?
Man, obviously the story is long. There is no short story. The result is short, but the story is long. For me, I started drinking and like getting high like really young. Like while we were in school, while you and I were in high school, I was already like drinking every weekend for sure, and getting high whenever I could as well. And that was kind of a constant. My parents were very supportive and very loving, but also kind of like hippies from the 60s, so they were like Brookline open-minded. They were like, let our son do what he needs to do to figure out who he is. And they were very much along those lines. I'm not going to say that was a bad idea, but the result might have not been the best. So I was going to like Stitch's Comedy Club by the time I was 16. I had a fake ID, and I was drinking at all the bars, going down to Lansdowne and doing all of that stuff and hitting all the clubs down there. I would create fake identities of myself, and I would go into clubs and pretend I was somebody I wasn't. It was the beginning of my character development stuff that I do. I'd go in a bar and be like, hey, my name's Tony. I'm here for a weekend. I'm filming something for a TV show on ABC. What's everybody doing? I'd say, I look younger than I am. I'm actually 23, blah, blah, blah. And I would just create these people. And I spent a lot of time creating these kind of like personas. That was the beginning of it. And then I went to college, and the drinking turned more into like 5 or 6 days a week when I was in college, maybe 7. Played college football, didn't drink on game nights or anything, but I was obviously out a lot during the week. And then I retired from football like my junior year. I was still working out, I was still like doing a lot, staying in good shape and doing everything I could. I got to LA when I was 22, and I got an agent. I was focused. I got an agent, and then I didn't know what to do. And I felt lost. I felt like I'd gotten to where I thought as far as I could go by myself. And I got really depressed that I wasn't a working actor at 22. And why wasn't I famous yet? And what's happening? How come this is so hard? What's everybody doing? I'm a good actor. I do a good job in acting class. I'm getting some auditions. What's not working? And that depression led me down a rabbit hole where I started really abusing drugs and alcohol, and I started getting really heavily into everything. And for 3 years, I pretty much drank coke, meth every day, and I was just kind of like wasted for 3 years. There's a lot of stories inside of those 3 years. We don't need to discuss those specific things, but I definitely got in a lot of trouble and had everything from a gun put to my head to kind of like, to waking up on the street, like those kind of nights where I just woke up in an alleyway, and I was 100% a mess. And then if we had 2 hours, I would tell more, but basically we'll jump ahead. And basically what happens, I had a moment where I got into a motorcycle accident, and I totaled my motorcycle, wasted. I was obliterated. I walked away, which is shocking. And I called my acting teacher, and I'm like, what's going on? He goes, maybe you should consider cleaning up. He knew I was doing good work, and he knew that I was a mess. And I go, that's not the problem. He goes, how about checking out an AA meeting? And I'm like, that's not the problem. He goes, just go to a meeting. And I went to a meeting. Someone said to me that first night, they said, do you have a higher power? And I said, other than me, no. And they were like, you should consider that. Would you do 90 meetings in 90 days? And I said, it's not shocking is I go, I'll give you 30. I did it. You 30 days. And I said, I'll do 30 meetings in 30 days. And in those 30 days, I booked my first union acting job and became like a SAG actor. And I go, I'll give it another 30 days. And I booked another job. and then another 30 days, and I booked another job. And all of a sudden, the universe was showing me what I needed to see, which is that if I just got out of my own way, I was going to be fine. And about a year later, I finally had a really good agent, and they were like, we're not going to send you up for little things anymore. Are you okay just not doing junk jobs and holding out for the good stuff? And that question to me really rung true. Are you going to be okay if you don't work for a month? That's what I heard.
Right.
And I realized that was it, and that I was on the path. And we could talk about, the program and all the things that I kind of came along for me, but more than anything else, it was pretty much, there was a lot of a self-awareness. Once I stopped, I was already making amends. I was already meditating. It was all that stuff started to fall in line. All of it made sense to me already. And being accountable, taking action, all those things that I started to do. And that was 27 years ago. And I've never looked back.
Wow. And I lived in Brookline as well. I lived on Beacon Street, and I had a pretty, middle-class family. My mom was a television producer. My dad was in the Air Force. They were separated or divorced, I believe, at that time. And I wasn't that high school kid that was going out, behind the school and getting high or drinking or whatever. For me, I think it really turned in college. I was gang raped at 18 years old.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And but I never processed it. I remember going back to my dorm, and I drank until I couldn't feel anything anymore. And then I never stopped, because I woke up the next day and I remembered, and I was like, okay, let me just drink until I can't feel anymore. And that turned into 30 years of not really being in tune with hurt, with pain, with loss, with love, with joy, with fear, with anger. I had we were all kind of like meshed into one big blah of life. And there wasn't any, I went into television, worked behind the scenes. I was a producer, I was a director, did great, had a wonderful career. And it really wasn't until that it was November 19th, 2017. And my husband came home, and I must have been completely drunk or sloppy or whatever. I don't even remember. Just days just kind of went into each other. And he went into my bureau, and there he took out the bottles of vodka, and he just kind of lined them up on my dresser for me. That was it. The pain and the hurt in his eyes, because I knew and at that point I was doing like I don't even know what the size was, like a 2-liter of vodka.
Yeah.
I was working. I was going to church. I raised my children. I was winning awards. I was driving. I was doing everything. And never felt.
It's a tough thing. I wasn't somebody, I wasn't getting high in the quad in high school. Nobody really knew what I was doing, I don't think. I was kind of living a dual life of school life and then this other life where I was going out at night, which very few people really knew about me. But for me, when we talk about that journey, when I got to the end, the crazy thing is my acting teacher said, make this phone call. And I called AA back in the day. I said, what do I do? He goes, call 411, ask for AA. And so I called information, and they connected me, and this guy got on the hotline in LA, and he was like, hi, Alcoholics Anonymous, can I help you? And I was like, yeah, I need a meeting. He's like, how long have you been sober? I'm like, 30 minutes. And he was like, oh my God, this is my first night on the hotline. Are you going to be okay? And I go, I think so. He's like, we need to get you a meeting. I'm like, okay, well, I'll go tomorrow. And it's fairly comical. He was panicking more than I was about what to do with this guy who didn't know what to do. But there was, I was a functioning addict as well, in the sense that I never lost a job. I just didn't want more responsibility. I wasn't working as an actor, but I was waiting tables, I was bartending, I was able to do everything I needed to do, I was paying my rent, I wasn't stealing from people. I never got to that point of of addiction where there was a quote rock bottom that was so dangerous or I got arrested. None of that happened. Yeah, I had a couple of warrants because I didn't pay some tickets because I was an irresponsible 22-year-old. But other than that, like I was just, I was a mess, but I wasn't so damaged that I had to get help. And that was unfortunate. In some ways, if I really dipped lower, I would have found an answer sooner. I'm glad I survived, but you sit there and you think back, it's like, wow, it's crazy. The crazy stuff is when I look back is when I tell people stories about how I felt like Neo in the Matrix, that I was just dodging bullets, and I can't believe that I can't believe that I'm still here. That's the craziest part.
Yeah. I mean, same. You talk about being comfortable in your own skin, and I feel that so much now. There is a light. There's a clarity that is so overwhelmingly perfect in my life, and I don't mean that to say that everything in my life is better now. Well, yes, it's better because I'm not drinking,
right.
But dealing with disappointment is clear. Dealing with absolute joy is clear, and I didn't have that for so many years. I really kind of feel like I lost so many opportunities to really connect and be myself with people. Do you think about back then and really not that idea of not being comfortable in your skin?
I wouldn't say it was in relationships. I was just unhappy because my career wasn't where I wanted to be. I was dating a tremendous amount and I was doing just fine in that area. I was never, I didn't come home a couple of times or I didn't show up for dates because I was a mess, but I think everybody knew what they were getting into if you were dealing with me at that point in my life too. I was on my motorcycle. I looked like one of the lost boys and I was just running around, just being trouble, and that's it. So I didn't really experience that kind of frustrating. The biggest thing is that my family and I had a big falling out and we didn't talk for a while, for a few years. And I know that was very hard for them. At the height of my addiction, it was hard to pin me down and I just stopped talking to my family. And I take responsibility for that and I've apologized for that. And we both had our part in not maybe addressing things as we should have, And
it was because they saw that you were going down the wrong path, or what was?
Yeah, I know that it upset my sister tremendously that she stopped talking about having a brother. Stopped telling people she knew that she had a brother because she didn't want to talk about it. My dad was angry that I was not accessible or being what maybe the son that he wanted. It's hard to put my finger on it. I don't want to project or guess what his thoughts exactly are on the situation. I know they're all very proud of me now, and that's all that really matters, but I know for a couple of years it was rough, and we've talked it through and yelled it through and dealt with those things. But that was that was probably the most difficult thing. I in a weird way, we're closer now because of it, because they know, I came out the other side and I know that my dad is very happy that I'm not a quitter, and I stood by myself. I know at the time they didn't trust me. They didn't know, even though I never stole or anything, I know that they didn't trust what I was up to or what I was doing. But I'm so glad that today that we've been able to mend all of that and put that all behind us. And that's great. And they're very, every year that I post something on my birthday, my mom is super, super, super supportive. So.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There were so many people in my life who had no idea what I was dealing with. I hid it so well. I characterized myself. I told the biggest lie for 30 years. And I remember when I finally, decided to talk to my mom about it, and she had so much guilt because she's like, I never knew. Well, and she took that as like she failed in some way. I'm like, Mom, I didn't want you to know. I didn't want to hear your mouth if you came at me. My husband knew because he was there with me day in and day out, but I still hid it from him. You know, when he was pulling those vodka bottles out, I mean, he wasn't seeing that stuff come into the house.
And here's the thing. In my case, my mom has said to me, she's like, were we bad parents? Was this our fault? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, you know, I mean, you might have introduced me to weed when I was a kid, but that does not, you're not the one who was holding a friggin' straw up to my nose every day for 2 years. Or when I was dealing cocaine, you didn't suggest that would be a good business for me to get into. Like, no, like that's not all, that's all true. But when you sit there and you kind of like dive into all that, it's so hard. It's so hard. I was dating this girl, Rain Pryor, Richard Pryor's daughter, who I'm so grateful I met her. She saw me at a table read, and she saw that I was a mess, and she came up to me. This was just before I called the AA hotline. But she saw me at a table read, and she came up to me after the read, and she's like, I want you to join my theater company. I think you're super talented, but you need to stop getting high because you remind me of my father.
Wow.
And I was like, what? And she's like, you remind me of my dad. I'm like, I'm so messed up that I remind you of Richard Pryor? And she was like, mm-hmm. And that was bizarrely flattering and also like incredibly shocking, you know, and devastating. Like I'm like, she thinks I'm that talented and that messed up, you know, and she drove me to some of my first AA meetings, and she like, you know, and she really helped me get my life together, you know, and offered me what I needed, which is a theater company to show up at every day and perform. And remember, and also in a safe environment where I could be creative and not be scared about showing who I really was or what I could really do, and that I could fail there and not feel like I need to be high to do this. And you know, I really credit her for standing by me and helping me get through that tough period.
Yeah, my husband was right there with me when I stopped, and it was right before Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving is like the biggest kind of family holiday that we have. And I remember saying to him, I was like, I can't go. You know, I was always the life of the party and the jokester and this and that, and just and I couldn't go. And it was the first time I had cooked this poor little pathetic turkey by myself, sitting in my 2-bedroom condo with my husband and my stepson, and I felt like the biggest piece of crap in the world. And now, mind you, this is only like 12 days after I quit, and I was still detoxing. My body felt like I got hit by 15 trucks on both sides. But I woke up and the next day after Thanksgiving, and I said, okay, I got through one holiday. Mm-hmm. And now, you know, and then it was the whole, you know, run up to Christmas and the same thing. And I just started taking it just one kind of little milestone at a time.
One day at a time. Sure.
One day at a time. And, but I did not, I attended an AA meeting and I did not go back. And, you know, and it's not for everyone, we'll say that, right? But for me, I really turned into my spirituality, my relationship with God. And that's really what kind of sustained me, and to the point where I was able to, you know, I stood up in front of my entire congregation and I told them, hey, I'm Tonya. I drank every day for 30 years. And the faces were like, what? You know, yeah, I drank before I went to church. I drank as soon as I got out of church. I drank before I went to work. And people just didn't realize that, you know, when you want to drink or smoke or snort or whatever, you're gonna move everything. You're gonna move mountains aside to make that happen.
It's so crazy. I mean, I cleaned up and I went to a meeting, and look, like I said, 30 meetings in 30 days, and I did 90 in 90 days, and I did do meetings for 2 years. I now go back only on my birthday every year, just to speak to people and say, like, if this isn't for you, that's fine, but just realize you need to stay clean and find a path. That's what you need to do. And I'm like you, like, you know, it doesn't matter if you find God. I don't care what you believe in. Meditation, go into like the mountains and find a monk. It doesn't matter, but find peace, right? Just find peace. The big thing for me is I cleaned up and I was at a meeting and they say to find somebody who has what you want and talk to them. and try to see what they have, what you want, and how to get that. There was an actor who was a very big actor at the time when I got sober. He's passed away. He ended up going back out and overdosing, which was really sad. But he was my idol. He was an idol of mine. I wanted to be him. I play the roles that he plays. I knew. I'm like, that's the trajectory for me. I'm going to play character roles, and I knew him from different shows. And I'm like, that guy is exactly what I'm going to become. And I knew it. And I went up to him and I said, hey, well, you got a sponsor? I don't have a sponsor. And he's like, I don't sponsor people, but here's my number and call me if there's ever a problem. And he called me, and I called him one night when I was having a meltdown. And I said, I just want to go out and get totally screwed up. And he goes, he said the most important thing that ever got said to me. He goes, this is what separates the boys from the men. He's like, boys run away from their problems, men face them. Which are you? Which was the perfect thing to say to me. Like, and I was like, yeah. I'm like, yo, don't talk trash to me. I am a man. And he's like, well, then get yourself to a meeting. And I did. I got up, I went to a meeting, and I said, I stood in front of the group. I go, I don't have any money. I'm living in an apartment with just a mattress and a TV. I have one light bulb that I have to literally move from room to room because I can't afford an extra light bulb right now. I just went through my entire apartment, every pair of pants I had to try to find enough change to buy a pack of cigarettes because I was still smoking. And I was like, and I needed toilet paper. And I went to the store, got toilet paper. I was like, cheapest cigarettes, cheapest toilet paper, one light bulb, and that's my life. And I go, and today's still better than yesterday because yesterday I was a train wreck. So, okay. And that was it. And that was kind of like, that was a big day for me because I admitted the humble existence that I had at 24, 25. And I just realized I was lucky to be alive. And I was not going to be able to go back to what I had. I was going to have to start from zero and figure it out. And he helped with that. He did. And when he passed away, it was devastating for me, but in a weird way, he's kind of like my savior in the sense that he perished for my sins. And I realized, I look at that every day and I go, I don't want that to happen to me. I mean, it happened to him. It's horrible, but he keeps me alive because of what happened to him. I go, I'm gonna keep having that career that we both should have had.
I had a moment probably a year and a half ago where I was at a awful job, not doing anything creative, not doing anything that I wanted to do, but needed to pay the bills, and got fired. And I was driving home, and I drove into do you remember Martinetti's? There's Martinetti's Liquor. It's a liquor store here in Massachusetts. They have several different things. Anyways, I walked right into their parking lot, and I sat there, and I just sat there and cried. I never got out of my car, but I just sat there and I just stood at it. And I knew at that point that my life was shifting, and I didn't know what it meant, but I knew if I could just drive out of that parking lot and not go into that liquor store, that there was anything I could do. And no, getting fired is totally not the worst thing that could ever happen to you at all. No. But
that was the best thing that could happen to you.
It was the best thing that could happen to me, exactly. And for me, because it was just me, it was like Tony against the universe, right? It wasn't, it wasn't a loss of a friend or anything, but it was just me against me. And driving there and just knowing that I was not going to get out that car and I was going to go home and just deal with whatever it is I needed to deal with. I know I'm never going to drink again, because what I have now is just so much better than anything. I mean, first of all, not waking up with a hangover is like, what? That's just heaven right there. But just really not having to worry about what my last step was. What did I do yesterday? What did I say? Did I hurt somebody? Did I all that stuff. I don't have to question any of that stuff. It's just, it's liberating.
But on top of that, it's like, I tell people, I go, when I was 20 years old, I could drink a 12 pack and do an 8-ball and I'd play basketball the next morning. Now, if I eat gluten, I can't walk for 3 days. Like, it's like, there's a different world going on. We're dealing with a whole different set of problems.
Yeah.
So and I tell people, people are like, between 30 and 40, you didn't look like you aged. I go, because when I was 30, I was so obliterated that I looked like I was 40. And during that time, it just kind of like, I met in the middle. It's like
right.
I was slowly regenerating because I wasn't using and aging at the same time. So I kind of like caught up to where I was. But yeah, my body couldn't take the beating I gave it. It's impossible. To go back now would be like not going to the gym for a decade and then trying to bench press 250 pounds. I would kill myself. There's no surviving going back out for me. Because I don't understand having a glass of wine. I don't get it. I want to have a bottle of wine. One glass of wine means I should get two. If I get two, it's cheaper to get a bottle. It's cheaper to get a bottle. I should just go to the liquor store and buy a case and keep it in my house. Hey, I wonder what Jesus down on 3rd and Alvarado's doing. Maybe he's got an 8-ball. I bet he does. He usually gets delivery on Tuesdays. Let's go down there. And next thing you know, it's a month later. And so like, I know that I'm like Thelma and Louise heading off the cliff. Like there is no slowing up for me ever. And I just can't go back. And I'm dangerous. When I'm on a diet, I lose so much weight. People were concerned about what happens. They're like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
When I work on a TV show, I have to gain weight. My doctor's like, "You're going to kill yourself." I have a hard enough time, like limiting myself and finding myself in a place where I'm not excessive in my normal existence. I don't know how to have one M&M. I can't have one Dorito. I don't know how to do any of that.
Right.
So I just have to accept the fact that I can't touch the stuff that might kill me. I just can't.
Yeah, for me, I think I changed that addictive behavior into the creative process. I was so afraid of what phenomenal Tonya was that I never allowed her to be, if that makes sense. I never allowed myself to be the best I could be. I was very comfortable with being mediocre because then I didn't shine. And as long as I didn't shine, you couldn't see what was behind the mask, right? I had no problem just kind of fitting in. Now I'm like just pushing stuff out of my way. Nope. Want to be better than that. Want to be better than that. Want to keep working harder and learning more and doing this and doing that, and not afraid of, what's behind the mask because I'm right here. There's nothing else. Absolutely nothing else.
And it's also amazing. Like I cleaned up my act, and people started showing up to ask me to. I tend to be a leader a lot of the time, but when I was using, I wasn't a leader. I was just muscle, and that was it. And as soon as I cleaned up, people would ask me to do everything from teach, to give them advice, to be involved, to direct things, to be involved in projects. And there's an energy that you give off when you're obviously in control of your destiny and you're an entity. Some people also don't like that. I also have learned that, the strength that comes along with my opinionated kind of like aggressive behavior and confidence also affects people who don't have that. So, but I usually don't want those people in my life. So it's a give and take.
Yeah. Now, do you sponsor people?
I do not.
Yeah.
I don't. Because like I said, I don't go to enough meetings that I don't think it's responsible for me to kind of like do that. But what I do is like, if anyone calls me and says my friend has a problem, I make time to talk to them.
Yeah.
If someone says that they need to go for a hike and they're struggling, we go for a hike. If a friend of mine says, I need a meeting, can you help me? I will pick them up and I will take them. If you need a ride to the airport, no matter who you are, I will give it to you if you ask me. I try to be of service in a way that is constantly walking the walk and talking the talk that I have told myself, much like in what you read. I remind myself, I wrote that on my birthday, my 27th birthday, to remind myself, this is what I stand for and what I believe. It's not like it's all true, but part of putting that down is to remind myself that I actually mean this. And I try to live a life that is an example for other people. And I've been lucky enough to have people in my life who have gotten sober and cleaned up because they see the way that I live my life and they say that they want that. And I don't think there's a bigger, there isn't anything that fills my heart more than seeing that I'm able to affect somebody in that way that they can take their life back.
That's incredible. The Power Play typically ends with asking our guests 3 questions. First, what makes you the angriest and what brings you joy?
Repression makes me the angriest. As a general answer, whether I'm being repressed or people are being repressed, I hate repression. I don't like it when people try to shut things down. That makes me mad. But joy, my dogs bring me a lot of joy. Traveling brings me a lot of joy. Those are two things, and when I'm on set, that brings me a lot of joy. Those are the three things that make me the happiest.
And you have rescue dogs, right?
I do.
I have 3 rescue dogs.
Nice.
Love
I used to have a charity for a while. I used to have something called Animal Avengers. My ex-wife and I still have a charity called the Shannon Elizabeth Foundation, which we focus more on big game now in Africa, but we used to do dogs and cats in LA, and we had an army of dogs.
Oh, rescue dogs are the best. I love them. All right, question number 2. What actor would you like to work with and why?
I mean, look, I think Sam Rockwell is unbelievable. So, I mean, he happens to be like the guy, if I could like really work with him and Gary Oldman. Those are the 2 guys who for me really like, I just think are amazing. Those 2 guys. And basically because they're just super talented, you know? And it wouldn't hurt me to work with them.
Last question. Has there been a role that you turned down that you wish you hadn't?
Absolutely not. I mean, I've been fortunate to work, but I haven't been fortunate to be offered everything underneath the sun. It's not like I don't have some story like Matt Damon, and I'm sure it does, but it's one of those things where, there are jobs that I've gotten close to that I didn't get that were very frustrating. But if I like the project, I always say yes. And I only say no to things that I know I just really don't want to do. And those do come up, but none of those things have turned into something where I'm like, damn it, I wish I was on that Nickelodeon show.
I'm going to put in a bonus question here. What would Joe tell 18-year-old Joe today?
Buy Amazon, Apple, and Bitcoin.
And there it is, right?
Yeah, that's all you need to know.
Oh, Joseph David Reitman, and I just grandmother called you, by the way. Thank you so much for being a guest today on the Power. It's been a treat. It's such an important conversation that we have, and I'm hoping that you continue to stay healthy. I continue to follow your work. I am a big fan, and Brookline High strong and all that good stuff.
Thank you. I miss breakdancing in the alleyway next to the movie theater. I miss it.
All right. Well, you stay healthy, stay strong, stay safe.
Thank you. You too.
Again. All right. Remember, you can listen to past episodes of the Power Play wherever you subscribe to podcasts, including iTunes, iHeartRadio, and now Pandora Podcasts. You can also watch our interviews on YouTube. Simply search Hull Bay Productions Media Channel and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And as always, we air on BroncoEyeRadio.com each and every Saturday at 5 p.m. So be sure to tune into the PowerPLAY Show on Thursdays for a new episode wherever you subscribe to podcasts or on our YouTube channel, Hull Bay Productions Media Channel, or simply visit thepowerplayshow.com. Until next time, I'm Tonya McGrath. Put on a mask for yourself and others.